The Proverbs are often an overlooked book in the Word that is full of just wisdom and clarity and understanding for the modern day. We look at it as maybe sometimes that it's not relevant, but unfortunately, we don't realize that the statements that were given by, the direction of the Lord through wisdom and through counsel and through understanding. And it wasn't just a single person that wrote the entire book, it was several different people. But I want to break some of it down. I want to go through the book of Proverbs a little bit, and I'm starting this new series to where we can kind of get into it. There for a long time, I was doing a proverb a day. I did a chapter a day for a little while because there's 31 books, so some of that was good, but just kind of getting into breaking it down, kind of giving a modern twist, modern understanding of what some of it means. So if you want to join me, this series will be look like just like this. It'll be lit like this. So, and I'll try to label it like that. So, but we're just going to jump in and kind of go from there. So Proverbs 1, I'm going to be reading a little bit. So just so you guys know, introduction of the book. I'm reading out of the NET version. So the NET is a New English translation to where it had a lot of different biblical scholars and language experts to go through, and they transliterated everything to the best of our knowledge today with the best words that we have use of today, right? So if you're a King James, no worries. If you're ESV, any of those things, whatever translation that you subscribe to, is fine. Transliteration is a really dangerous thing, unfortunately, because we don't have the true understanding of the depth of the knowledge and language that was spoken back then. So some of our words can actually flatten the language a little bit and remove a bit of the meaning, because one word back then had a bit more of a deeper meaning than what we understand them to be. So, and we'll break into some of that a little bit, but so we'll just get in Proverbs 1:1. So the Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel, to learn wisdom and moral instruction, to discern wise counsel. So essentially, we're just breaking down, what are we getting into? What's this book about? So the Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, he's just letting us know who wrote this particular book, who wrote this chapter, what are we doing into it, why are we here, right? So pretty simple stuff so far. To receive moral instruction and skillful living in righteousness, justice, and equity. That's really interesting to me, because moral instruction is something that, one of the big debates on the Bible and calls that atheists will get into is, where does moral law come from? How do you know morality exists? That kind of stuff. So whenever you see, Solomon writing, hey, this is for moral instruction. This is to give wisdom in a humanistic way, that we're going to talk about what's right just because it's right. What's the word say is right? What's right in the eyes of the Lord? And he begins to write those things out, So we're going to learn wisdom, and we're going to learn instruction, and we're going to discern wise counsel. So all of these things are just powerful, powerful pieces when you get into it. So we're going to get into to impart shrewdness to the morally naive, and a discerning plan to the young person. Shrewdness is a word that we don't use very often anymore. Essentially, it just means wisdom, cunningness, wise as a serpent, innocent as a dove, that kind of stuff. So shrewdness. How do I deal with those that are morally naive? How do I deal with those that are maybe don't have the true understanding of the depth that God would allow us to understand how to best live our lives? The fullness of God can be obtained through wisdom and spirit, but also it requires a certain level of sacrifice of our lives every day in order to walk in that. In discerning a plan to the young person. So basically, Solomon and his wisdom is understanding that the young need the old. A lot of churches don't do a great job now of allowing the older generation to speak and have a voice. They get pushed out, they get put out by whether it's modern worship or whether it's, these old timers just get upset. They earned a long life. They earned a place of honor just by living the length of life that they did. And there's so much wisdom that we can learn from an older generation if we'll just listen. It doesn't mean we got to do it just like them. It doesn't mean they were completely right, but sometimes the Lord will show you how to do something by showing you how not to do something. And if we push all of our older generation out as a church, and we don't give the young an opportunity to spend and invest time and give them a voice in our church, then we can run the risk of repeating the same mistakes that we could have learned from them. So just something to consider, guys. And Solomon's writing in it. So let the wise also hear and gain instruction, and let the discerning acquire guidance. To discern the meaning of a proverb and a parable, the sayings of the wise and their riddles. All right, so we're going to get in. We're at verse 7 right now. So fearing the Lord is the beginning of moral knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. So fear of the Lord isn't necessarily a thing of terror. When you break down the actual language that's here, Fearing the Lord is a place of honor. So fear at that point, there was a term that was used that was much broader than fear, as in scared. Oh my, whatever. It was a term that meant that you honored, that you gave reverence to. So essentially, you could substitute fearing for honoring the Lord as the beginning of moral knowledge, and giving sacrifice to the Lord as the beginning of moral knowledge. It doesn't mean that you're terrified of Him. Obviously, He can undo us. You hear that in Isaiah. You can be undone completely, but that's not what God does for us. God's such a loving and caring God that we just don't even understand it sometimes. So fearing the Lord is the beginning of moral knowledge, beginning to understand what morality looks like through understanding who God created you to be, right? So, but the fools despise wisdom and instruction. So you're going to hear a lot about fools in the book of Proverbs. If you relate to the fool, it is what it is. Let's refocus. You're going to hear a lot about fools in the book of Proverbs, and fools in the book of Proverbs are those that just don't have ears to hear, as Jesus would say. It's those that hear the word, hear the instruction, but they don't have ears to hear it. And not meaning they didn't hear it physically, it means that they didn't apply it spiritually or in their hearts, right? So, listen, my child, to the instruction from your father. Do not forsake the teaching from your mother. Essentially, just again, you go back to the young listen to the old. Like as a young person, and I'm only 39, so I'm not crazy old by any means, but as a young person, you don't always adhere to the instruction of your parents. We think that we know better. We think that we know more, and we think that maybe they're trying to stop us from being whoever. It won't happen like it did for you, like it does for me. We don't listen to the life lessons that our parents give us, and we end up taking the same path sometimes and fighting our parents' battles that we didn't have to. They'd already overcome some things, but we choose to not listen to them. We choose not to pay attention to them, and we go down the same paths that had we just listened and paid attention, we could have saved ourselves a lot of trouble, a lot of heartache. I know I've done that. So maybe you have, maybe you haven't. Listen, my child, to the instruction of your father, and do not forsake the teaching of your mother, for they will be like an elegant garland around your head and like pendants around your neck. Just saying that the wisdom of your parents is so valuable. And for some of us for some of you that maybe didn't grow up with parents, that's devastating. And that's a hard place to be, but it doesn't mean that you weren't loved. It doesn't mean that you didn't have somebody, hopefully, that poured into your life. And if you didn't, maybe there's a spiritual parent that's come alongside you, that's beginning to allow you to mentor under them and love on them. And I would encourage you, listen to the words that they say. One of my mentors used to say, it took me 50 years what I can teach you in 5 minutes, and I didn't get it at the time, but I remember now there's so many little nuggets of wisdom and clarity that I learned just because I had ears to hear. I was trying to learn. I wanted to learn, Excuse me, sorry. Getting over some crud. So, my child, if sinners try to entice you, do not consent. If they say, come with us, we will lie in wait to shed blood. We will ambush an innocent person capriciously. All right, so this is one of those things it's difficult if you don't begin to try and put it in layman's terms, in a basic term. You can oh, this doesn't even apply to us. So let's look at what it actually means. So, my child, if a sinner tries to entice you, do not consent. If they say, come with us, we will lie in wait, shed blood, and ambush an innocent person. So essentially what it is if you get around a group of people, around a group of friends that want to better their situation by hurting others, you're in the wrong group of friends. So our lives as people, we have simple, basic needs, and connection, community, love are some of those needs. So if you find that connection, community, or love with the wrong group of people, you'll go along to get along in order to not be outcast. So some of the worst decisions that you'll ever make is just an effort for you to find connection with people that you may not need to connect with. So if you're around a group of people, you've heard it before that your circle becomes your circumstance, or, if you hang around 9 people, you're going to be the 10th. You've heard all that stuff before. Well, that comes from Proverbs. So we're going to get into that as the series goes. But essentially, if you're walking with a group of people and you're finding connection, you're finding, clarity and love, and you've connected yourself with these groups of people, you're meeting a basic human need in your life. But the problem is, are you meeting it with the wrong group of people that's going to send you down a path that you never supposed to walk down? Same thing with a church, guys. Like if you're connected with a church or a ministry or a group that maybe there's some unhealthy churches out there. There's some unhealthy leadership out there that unfortunately can lead you astray, that can lead you down a path that isn't a healthy place to be. If you have a minister that's ministering to you out of insecurity or out of bitterness or out of anger or out of obligation, you recreate what you speak. From the heart, the mouth speaks. So as the mouth speaks, those words are powerful. And those things that the minister's preaching out of, the insecurities, all that, it creates division in the church without even realizing you're doing it. Because what you're doing when you speak out of insecurity as a minister, and you receive the word from an insecure person, right? When you receive that, what happens is the word is filtered through that insecurity. So everything that you're looking at, the perspective that you have, is now filtered through a place of hurt that you didn't even know you had. And it recreates that same hurt and that same concept, that same idea, that same mentality of a word or an interpretation of a word through that other person. So we have to be really mindful of that kind of thing. And so it doesn't mean that they're always going to create violence, but violence could also mean wrongdoing. It can mean ineffectiveness, right? So we got to be cautious of that. We will swallow them like Sheol, those of us who vigor like going down to the pit. We will seize all kinds of precious wealth and fill our homes with plunder. Join with us. We will share equally in what we steal. My child, do not go down their way. Withhold yourself from their past, for they are eager to inflict harm. They hasten to shed blood. Surely it is futile to spread a net in plain sight of any bird, but these men lie in wait for their own blood. They ambush their own lives. Such are those who gain profit unjustly. It takes away life from those who obtain it. So one of the things that we have to understand is the context of this is written in such a way that thievery, stealing, things like that was a life choice back then. That was a path that was probably a little more widespread than we understand it to be. So you'd have pickpockets, you'd have those that would steal from the wealthy. There would be caravans going. Well, you think you're going in the desert and there's a caravan, there's only 20 people on the caravan. Well, you've got 30 in your crew, you could take them out, right? Well, that was a source of income for a lot of people, and it was a path to unjust wealth because it was easy to go steal. That was easy. That was simple. I'd knock you upside your head, take your stuff, right? Well, what Solomon's warning against is those who seek to profit unjustly. Those are the men and the women that try and take things that aren't theirs. You've heard, don't cast your pearl before the swine, right? Don't put things out for the people that don't deserve to be around it, don't know how to steward it. So there's a few different ways to look at that. What these men would do is they would go steal the pearls. So the swine would steal the pearls, And it wasn't because maybe they were horrible, terrible people. Maybe it was because they felt like they didn't have an option. They were connecting with a group of people that they fell in with. Hey, everybody else is doing it. Let me just jump in because I don't want to be alienated or ostracized. Even though I may or may not come into agreement with it, I need what they're offering me in way of love, compassion, and relationship. So I'm willing to do that. How many of us have maybe went down the paths of those same situations, not maybe of causing bloodshed or stealing or robbing, but we went along with a group of people or someone in order to keep that bond or connection, but really we were hurting ourselves and hurting the people that were around us. So I've been to churches, unfortunately, where you look behind in the leadership and you just see a slew of hurting and broken people. The fruit of that ministry isn't one of life-giving and launching of ministers. It's one of building a platform on the top of other people, and it's a dangerous place to be. It's so dangerous. Whether you know it or whether you don't know it, you can look behind and see it, and the fruit of that is there's no sons to take it over. There's no uplifting, there's no upholding, there's no growth in the people, the discipleship of the people, and you just end up in this terrible place. So I think we can apply this to the church today. And it's weird because like it's talking about, don't go steal, don't go cause violence to people. Well, what if we took that into a modern concept and we said, well, don't go take money from people that are giving it, not knowing what you're going to use it for. So in ministry, this is more so talking to churches. If you're a pastor, being open with what's going on in your church will completely change your church for the better. So whenever you're able to be open and you're able to be transparent with people around you, it changes everything around you. Now, you're going to find out who's real and who's not. At that point, you're going to find out who's for you and who is just for what you can do for them. Whenever you're transparent with somebody, you're going to find out if they were for you or for what you can do for them. Because when you show the ugly, you show the struggle, you show the things that are burdening you, if those people walk away from you, you're going to know really clearly they were just along for the ride, man. They wasn't for you. But the thing that happens is ministers that aren't transparent, that aren't clear with people, you lose that genuinosity. You lose that genuine ministry time. You lose that place. And what happens is you create an environment that isn't safe for transparency, which means that it isn't safe for me to be vulnerable, which means that it isn't safe for me to be healed. So what happens is you inadvertently create an atmosphere that says you can be here, but you got to look like us, you got to dress like us, you got to be like us. May not even have meant to do it, but it happens. Well, how many of us have done that? Even in we alienate the people around us because they don't look like what we're used to. They don't look like who we're used to. And there's preferences, things like that. But what happens is sometimes you can fall in the same group circle and you'll get in this cycle of just a reverberation chamber that's just echoing the same thing that you already believe. There's no growth there. There's no challenging of beliefs because we're just falling into the cycle of the same group of people. So something to consider. So wisdom calls out in the street. She shouts loudly in the plazas. As the head of the noisy street, she calls. In the entrances to the gates in the city, she utters her words. How long will you simpletons love naivety? How long will you mockers delight in mockery and fools hate knowledge? If you will only respond to my rebuke, then I will pour out my thoughts to you. I will pour my words known to you. So essentially, Solomon is saying, wisdom is chasing you. You just have to slow down and let it catch you. So the things that happen sometimes, especially in our culture and our environment, which obviously Solomon saw it then, we get so busy and we get so mindset. You've heard busy, burdened under Satan's yoke. I've heard that before. It's old school Satan. But one of the things that happens is we get so busy that wisdom doesn't have a chance to catch up with us. There's a difference in wisdom and there's a difference in knowledge. Knowledge is knowing the right thing. Wisdom is applying the right thing, right? So if you look at the two differences, I can know the speed limit's 55, but if I go 70, I'm not operating out of wisdom. I'm operating out of a selfish spirit because I want to do what I want because I want to. They shouldn't tell me how fast to drive, all that stuff, right? So you get this rebelliousness that comes up, and rebellion is one of the opposites of wisdom, right? So if we're not careful, we'll find ourselves outpacing the wisdom trying to catch up to us. And really, it's that finding a pace in our lives that allows peace to be our compass and not a place of being driven. For decades, I was driven. I could make it happen, bro. Like, I was good at making money. I was good at making connections. I could start a business, blow it up, sell it, whatever, right? So I was so driven, though, but I was driven in the name of ministry. That's what's jacked up. I thought, well, if I can make a certain amount of money, I can go preach, I can do my thing for free. It's great. What happens, though, is I built a machine that eats money, and I had to feed the stupid thing. And as I was trying to feed it, I was so driven trying to find food, which was money, jobs, opportunity for the machine that I had created, that I wasn't able to truly walk in who God had called me to be. I was doing some ministry for sure. I was loving on people, encouraging people, helping people. I was doing the best I knew how to do. I was giving money away. But what I'm really truly called to do is stuff like this. I'm called to pray for you. I'm called to bring healing to you. Pray for healing for you, not bring it, obviously, but I'm called to pray for healing for you. I'm called to pray and help you break through things. I'm called to walk through life with you. I'm called to break down the scriptures and the Bible in a practical way that you can understand it in a way that actually makes sense. That's what I'm called to do. That's what I've been called to do for a long time. And I've done bits and pieces of it. But unfortunately, I outpaced wisdom for a long time, and I was so driven in life that I just didn't pay much attention to it, as I needed to, right? Because I was so focused in, and I didn't live the life that God had wanted me to live. I wasn't necessarily in like this major sin. I'd obviously had falls, I'd had failures, I'd had sin caught up in my life, obviously for different reasons, whatever. But I wasn't this what you'd consider like a terrible person, right? It wasn't even that. I was so driven trying to build something for God that I'd forgot to spend the time with God. It's a dangerous place to be. So wisdom is crying out in the streets, saying, "How long are you gonna avoid me? How long are you gonna run from me? Just stop and listen to me. Listen to me, guys." So good word from Solomon. So, however, because I called you and you refused to listen, because I stretched out my hand but no one paid attention, because you neglected all my advice, you did not comply with my rebuke. So I myself will laugh when disaster strikes you. I will mock you when dread comes, and when what you dread comes like a whirlwind, and disaster strikes like a devastating storm, when distressing trouble comes to you, they will call to me, but I will not answer. The diligently will seek me, and they will not find me, because they hated moral knowledge. They did not choose to fear the Lord. They did not comply with my advice. They spurned all my rebuke. Therefore they will eat from the fruit of their way, and they will be stuffed full of their own counsel. For the waywardness of the simpletons will kill them, and the carelessness, ease of fools will destroy them. But the one who listens to me will live in security, and will live at ease from the dread of harm. So obviously wisdom's a little bitter, you know what I mean? Wisdom done got upset and angry. So some of that's going to be coming out of Solomon's interpretation of this, right? So some of this we have to understand that as a human, as a man, he wrote it, and as a human, as a man, he has his own filters. He has his own. Struggles, his own emotions, his own feelings about what he's writing and what he feels like the Lord wants him to write. So as he's writing this, he's writing saying, man, you've asked for wisdom. Wisdom's chasing you. You've ignored it. So yeah, you're just going to have to deal with what comes. He's frustrated. I heard frustration is the manifestation of you not getting your own way. And at this point, that means that Solomon wants the best for his people. He wants the best for those that are around him. How many of us have wanted the same thing, and we find ourselves frustrated because they won't do what we think's best for them, And unfortunately, what happens is we can try and force our will on somebody, and that just drives them away from us. When you try and force your will on somebody, it drives them away from you. There's no place for that, We have to let people make their own decisions, and the best way to get somebody out of the ditch when they fall into it is not to fall into it with them. And it doesn't mean that you got to break life with them. It doesn't mean that you got to not have community with them. It just means that you have to be mindful that they're on a path that may or may not cause them to fall in a situation, kind of like what Solomon's saying, hey, well, you're going to eat the fruit of your own devices, your own counsel. If you've given wisdom and clarity to somebody and they've chosen to go a different path, chosen to go a different way, we have to allow that to happen and be okay with it and still walk with them through that place. We can't be selfish enough to say, well, you won't take my advice, I'm out, I'm done. That's an immature way to look at things. You have to be okay with people saying, hey, I thank you for your advice, but I'm going to go do the opposite. And then you say, okay, sure, I got you. I'll support you either way. I don't have to come into agreement with your life, your decisions, in order to love and support you and walk you through the things that are coming against you, right? I don't have to do that. I don't have to say, hey, I agree with everything you just did, so let's walk together. I can say, hey, bro, that was kind of stupid. I still got you. I'm going to walk with you. Are you okay? How can I help you? What can I do to be here for you? And some of us will get bitter and angry when it comes to somebody not doing the things that we suggest or say. And I would encourage you to begin to look at that a different way, because unfortunately what happens is you try and force your will on somebody, even if it's right. It may be completely right. But when you try and force your will on somebody, you're trying to play the position of God in their life, and that's not your position to play. It's not your role. Their faith doesn't belong in you. It belongs in God. And it's not to say your wisdom and your counsel and your intent is not amazing and exactly what they need to hear at exactly the right time. But if they choose to go against it, you as a human, as a believer, have now the responsibility, in my mind, to walk with them through whatever decision they make. And it doesn't mean that you got to support it. You tell them the whole time, hey, man, you about to hit the ditch, bro. You about to hit the ditch. Okay, you hit the ditch. All right, let's help you out. What I mean? You can do that, right? So one of the things that happens in the church when you walk into a church that has insecure believers or insecure leadership, there's no transparency. There's no vulnerability. So there is no place to fall there. Because if you fall, you're ostracized. You're kicked out. You're looked at as, oh, my God, I can't believe he did that. Why? Why can you not believe he did that? He's a broken human being that's trying to figure out how to live out a perfect gospel. Why can't you figure out why he did that? Why are you not okay that he did it? Why are you offended that he let you down? See, what happens is unmet expectations in our life is what really causes most of the hurt. And there's a reasonable expectation on people, sure. But when you look at a leader and you see that leader fall, you had an expectation that leader wasn't in a place to fall. Why? He's a person. He's a human. Why did that leader fall devastate you to that point? It's because you had an expectation on that person that they didn't even know about and they weren't meant to carry. We're not meant to carry other people's expectations, guys. See, we're not meant to put our faith in other people. We're meant to put our faith in God. God's the only one that's strong enough to carry the level of faith that we have in our lives. God's the only one that can carry expectations in our life, because if we put them on other people and those other people fall, let us down, or break, then we can take that as our identity. We can take that as, oh, everything that we had was now useless. And what happens is now you've created a divisiveness that you caused, because you put so much on this other person. You put so much on this relationship. You put so much on this job. And when it lets you down, your hope is now gone, because what was holding your hope doesn't exist anymore. that's a sad place to be at, and it's hard and it's devastating, and that's what causes church burn and church hurt, and that's what causes believers to walk away from the faith, and that's what causes all the things that we see when we're trying to minister and love on other believers that have come from these situations. It's like, hey, you were taught inaccurately. You were taught the wrong place to put your faith. And people, I don't think, do it on purpose. I don't think so. I like to think everybody's relatively decent people, right? But it still happens. And when it happens, it's a devastating place when it gets let down. So, all right, well, that's Proverbs 1. Hope y'all had a good night. I hope you have a good time looking at it. If you get something out of it, share this. Let people know about it. We're going to go through the whole book of Proverbs here pretty soon, so I'm excited about it and look forward to hopefully hearing some good comments. So, all right, guys.